Well, a very good morning and welcome back to the Golden Trail World Series, the final day of the season. Ledro Sky Trentino, the event that will wrap up the season for the men. The women's finishing yesterday. 21 kilometers of racing over the most spectacular mountains in the Alps and a total of 1,600 meters of climbing. They'll be going up to within inches of the 2,000 meter mark. The going up is hard, the coming down is absolutely brutal. This is going to be a fantastic day, and Elassine El-Azawi of Morocco is looking to wrap up his second successful victory in the Trail Series. We'll see how he gets on. He was brilliant in the prologue, and David Hellard is with me to cast his expert eye over the progress of the runners as we go along. David, this is one of the most spectacular venues we've been to for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful, as you can see from these pictures. The conditions are slightly different today. There is a bed of clouds above them, but first, here is our men's prologue. And as you can see, Elassine El-Azawi on screen now went out like a rocket. On the climb, he put 30 seconds into everyone. Patrick Kipanino, his greatest rival, close behind, Christian Allen also. And it's on the downhill here that Elassine really strode away. Gapping everyone, including that gentleman, Joey Hadon, specialist orienteer, and by the base, Elassine had won by a whopping 2 minutes. Unbelievable. Joey Hadon, second place, and Taylor Stack on the screen there in third. Christian Allen coming through fifth place. But surprisingly, Patrick Kipanino, his biggest rival, and Philemon Kiriago outside the top three, which makes a big difference to the overall score and what's going to happen today and what the tactics are.
Yeah, absolutely. As you see the points on the board, 700 points to El-Azawi. He said he wanted to come and get maximum points. He's done just that going into the final day of the season. Kipanino, he's got some work to do and actually is reliant on someone else getting between himself and El-Azawi if he is going to be king of the season. Kiriago, it's been a great season. He was only 12 points behind at the beginning of this weekend. He now finds himself 42 points adrift. And so I think realistically the best he can hope for is a top 2 finish in the season. The Kenyans have been good. They've won 5 of the 8 races so far. The rest have all gone to Elassine El-Azawi of Morocco. Now let's have a look at the course, David. Exactly the same as yesterday, and it starts with that 1,000 meter sprint along the lake.
Yeah, and we saw how brutal it was yesterday. A very steep climb, hard to overtake in the woods, and it just goes on and on, over 1,000 meters covered in less than 6K. When they get to the top here, it doesn't end though. The suffering continues. It opens up for a bit, but they then run across this ridge, which is extremely technical. You'll see there are trenches that have been dug in from the First World War, and it makes very hard running. And our athletes found it incredibly hard to actually find a rhythm as they were going up and down, always having to look after their feet. But this is the section we're excited about, the absolutely brutal down, over 1,000 meters of down in less than 4.6K. It's one of the most technical sections we've got in the whole series, and then they have this death march home when they're absolutely shattered. They'll be hoping that they're still with Elassine at this stage, but you know, if Elassine is free at the top of that downhill, the question is, can anyone live with him, given how fast he was in the prologue?
Yeah, 560 meters of descent in under 9 minutes. That is absolutely staggering how he managed to do that. He took some risks, but it seems to have paid off because it's put him in control of the series with 700 points, 29 clear of Kipanino, 42, as I mentioned, ahead of Kiriago, and Suli back at 140, who's not really in the picture for today. So Elassine is in just the position he wanted to be, and we'll see how he gets on today. Incidentally, the high peak is Chima Parry, which I'm sure many of you have walked over. Stunning location, highly recommended route, just under 2,000 meters. Here is Elassine himself, certainly the man to watch.
And we've got That first shot was him winning the series last year. He seems to be untouchable at the end of the series, at the end of the seasons. He's made perfect 2 from 2 prologue and finals in the last 2 seasons, but we can see so many of these shots are featuring his closest rivals, Patrick Kipignino and Filimon Kiriago. Patrick won in Kobe. He then repeated that performance out in China. Filimon Kiriago winning in Noli, out-sprinting Elisine for the very first time. Then it came to Mexico, and it was a replay of previous years. Even though they thought they had the best of him, when it came to the finish, and we're seeing Taylor Stack emerging here, a new athlete on the season this year. In fact, it's quite hard to give a narrative to this story because they keep on showing different races, but this was back in Noli. It gives you a sense of the contrasting conditions that these athletes race in.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that Kipignino's won twice, but not when Elisine's been racing. Kiriago has beaten Elizoe, so that's going to be interesting to see whether he can do the same again today. The runners are now on their marks. Over 180 runners entered today. Great to say that there are 3 British athletes running. We've got Sasha Shepelin, Ewan Dowd from Oban in Scotland, and Finn Lydon, all of whom qualified through the Nevis Skyline race. So we'll try and track their progress. It is not easy. All the cameras focus on those up the front of the field. So if you want airtime, you need to be leading this race. Otherwise, you may just be an also-ran as far as the TV is concerned, which is always a shame, but we will do our best to try and track them. There's Kiriago.
And there's Patrick Kipignino on screen here. He's in 2nd place in our overall. He's been saying in the press and speaking to his manager this morning, he's prepared to go all out on that first climb to just try and disrupt El Hussein, because they both realise they need to do something different if they're going to achieve success here. Interestingly, on our left of screen, this is Cesare from Cesare Maestri. He is the record holder on a similar course to this, the local runner. So he has a good advantage on these downhills. And that was Elisina Lazari we saw last on screen, all ready to go.
Well, a very warm welcome if you've just joined us. You are just in time for the start of the final race of the season in the Golden Trail World Series. 8 races prior to this final, a prologue 2 days ago, and today 21k, 1600 meters to climb. This is as tough as any race they've done so far this season. Wearing number 1, Elisine El Azawi of Morocco, the favourite to win not just today, he's the favourite to win the Tour for the 2nd season in succession. The flying camel, they call him. He is sensational when he's on form. And to outrun him on the uphill is going to be extremely difficult. But that is what the Kenyans have got to try and do.
Yeah, it's really going to have to be a team effort today. The fact there's 2 of them is a huge advantage, but they've tried several times this season to try and disrupt him, and only in one of those races have they succeeded.
Taylor Stack on the right of your picture wearing 6. Number 7 is Roberto De Lorenzi from Switzerland. It's an Italian sounding name, but he comes from Switzerland, and he occasionally has a brilliant race. So watch out for him. Seoli wearing 4, number 9 on the left of your screen. That's Dominic Rowley from Switzerland also. They are the highest ranked runners in the Tour. Rowley ranked at 8. We've also got Galbodin of France racing, Bogdan Damien of Romania. He's a class act wearing 11. We may pick him out as the race goes on. So away we go, 1,400 meters of relative flat. They've got about 10 meters to climb in that distance. This is where the sprint category comes into it. It'd be interesting to see whether they just settle down behind the favorites or whether someone's going to go for glory early on.
Yeah, we saw yesterday Valentin Ruta, and on our right, that is Paul Machoka, who isn't in our top 10 currently, but a very strong climber. It wouldn't surprise me if he is up amongst this group for the first half of the race. And indeed, if we think back to Noli last year and the World Championships, so the final 2 years ago, it's Paul Machoka who was with them on the climb. But we saw yesterday Valentin Ruto leading out, and one of the challenges when it feels so comfortable, is it the right decision to burn some of your energy to get ahead when you know you're a fast flat runner, or should you try and conserve yourself? But it looks like all the names we expect are at the front. The American Taylor Stack, a very good track runner, up amongst them as well.
Yeah, the Kenyans beautifully smooth on the trail section. This is the sort of running that they have at home. A lot of the Kenyans come from a farming background, so they're not shy of a day's hard graft. Yesterday it was Madalena Florea who took the lead on this flat section. Were you surprised to see that, or do you think she was just laying her cards on the table?
It's always hard to predict what Madalena is going to do in a race, because I think she often just decides just based on her instinct at the time. But we saw in the prologue, she came out and dominated on the first climb, and I think she wanted to lay down a marker in the main race. And we can see that's happening today. Philemon Kiriago behind Paul Machoka there, the Kenyan runner, he is leading out, and this potentially could be a tactic from them. We saw in Tepec in Mexico, Philemon was the athlete who was actually taking the race to El Hacin, and part of their challenge today will be to keep on stressing him, to keep on seeing when he responds, and hoping that one of them can make a clean break while the other one tries to distract him and slow him down.
Yeah, El Hacin, I was going to say only, has to finish in the top two to ensure that he comes away as the champion. But if Kipingino is going to win, El Hacin has got to finish down in third, and Kipingino has got to win this one with one of his teammates, you would assume, between himself and the Moroccan.
And they will be hoping for a few favours along the way. We saw yesterday the difference that Lauren Gregory made to the overall, and we had quite a few new names in the top 10. There is the national series, people who've won their local race, who've qualified, but runners like Christian Allen, who's just come through for Nike Trail, he is an extremely adept uphill runner. He's outside our top 10 just because he's had a few unlucky races this season, but we saw in the prologue he was the closest runner in the prologue to El Hacin, and so there is a chance that runners like him, we've mentioned Dominic Rowley, Taylor Stack, could be up in those top three. And so if Patrick wants to win the overall, there is a chance he doesn't have to just rely on Philemon Kiriago's teammate to be in between the places.
Well, Christian Allen's gone for broke in the early stages. The American, very difficult for the American runners to take part in all the Tour races, but as I'm sure you're aware, your three best results from the 8 count, so it means you've really only got to compete in one full week, because we have, what, 2 races in July, 2 in August, and then a big break between this final in October. 9 weeks between the last race at Sierra Zinal and today, so they've had plenty of time to recover. But of course, David, they've had the World Championship mountain running between then and now.
Absolutely, and part of the challenge of this is to choose which races are going to give you the most points, but allow you to come into the final without being too tired. Significantly, Christian on screen at the front, he's here with his whole family. He did come out and race in the World Championships, but that's actually allowed him to travel to Europe earlier than he normally does for a race. So he has been here with his 4 kids and wife for the past 10 days, adapting, exploring the area. So he is more rested than he tends to be coming into a race like this. And if you're wondering how he is at the front at this stage, he has a 10K time of 28:26, an extremely fast road and track athlete.
Yeah, so he's cruising. He's leading, but he's cruising. And of course, the Americans, like the Africans, do a lot of their training, and a lot of them live up at altitude. So altitude's not going to be too much of a problem here. We go up to 2,000 meters at the peak, the high point at Cima Pari, and then Cima d'Oro just a little bit lower than that. But at that sort of level, at the very most, you have 4% less oxygen than you do down at sea level. So it's not a massively significant amount when you compare it to Tepec, where they went up over 3,000 meters.
Yeah, completely right. But one of the challenges that they may have overlooked, and we did see it yesterday, in the last 20% of the race, that long dredge back to the finish. A lot of athletes were really slowing down, and that when you get to altitude, you dehydrate far quicker. I think you dehydrate 5 times faster at 3,000 meters than you do at sea level. And so if they're not managing themselves well, there's only 2 nutrition stops in this race. And so taking on liquid early will potentially make a difference to how well they're running at the end. But our camera runner struggling to stay ahead of the pace of Christian Allen. That is how fast he is taking it out right now.
Yeah, the cameraman is breathing considerably harder than he was yesterday. It's his breathing we get on the audio at this stage. Incidentally, the winning time by Lauren Gregory yesterday, 2:22.51. Generally, the margin between the men and the women's time is between 12 and 15%. What are you expecting, David, in terms of the winning time?
I spoke to Cesare Maestri, who is the local runner, the course record holder. He estimates around 2 hours for this course. I do think if you look at the breadth of skill across the front of the pack, Ellison is so good at up and down, and he will be pushed on the way up by the runners that I think he'll probably stretch that margin a little bit over the race finish time we had yesterday. But we've got Philemon Curiego in second place at the moment, and Paul Machaka just behind in the grey and white, just behind him in third.
So early days, and Curiego, Machoka are there. We've got Dylan Ribeiro is up there. Christian Allen, as we saw, leading the way at the moment. Notice that Ellison El-Azawi just didn't get involved in the bun fight on that first K&a-half along the side of the lake, dropping back significantly. This is the ridge that they've got to negotiate, and this is where those trenches have been dug. You can see some of them for yourselves, and it's all to do with the First World War, as David mentioned, but it breaks up your rhythm and makes that traverse of the ridge very, very difficult.
And as you said,
being on site like 1 week before the race is really important, especially if the race is like far away from home. Hi, I'm Roberto De Lorenzi, Swiss runner, 28 years old, and running for Brooks Trail Runners. I think it's a good advantage to come a few days before the race. Every athlete has like his own strategy to do the race, but if you have in your mind every single part of the race, for sure easier to manage the race. Yeah, for me the main things that I'm looking at when I'm trying the course is for sure like the technicity of the terrain, like if it's runnable, if it's technical. Also a lot like how long are the climbs, how long are the descents. I think this is the most important thing, because you can see at the profile, you can see, okay, it's like 2 kilometers and 300 elevation, but if you are really going to try it, maybe you see that when you are running there is also like a downhill part. So when you are doing a good effort, it's for me it's really important to know what is coming, so I can manage my energy better. If you not check the course, I think it could go really wrong, and with such a high level of athletes, you cannot manage to do a bad race, so it's really important to be here before.
So De Lorenzi, one of those who likes to scout out the course and learn every inch of it before he actually races, and you can understand that, especially when it's as technical as this. In terms of experiencing the downhill here, David, where a lot of time can be lost, how important is it to know where the danger spots are, and ultimately how much time can you lose if you're not familiar with it?
I mean, we saw yesterday that Alice Gadji, the local runner, had an incredibly good performance on the downhill because she knew the course. But when we had runners like Marlin Osser, Lauren Gregory, you know, Marlin was putting 30 seconds into even Lauren Gregory. And so we saw 2 to 3 minutes amongst them. I'd actually say of our top 10 women, the top 5 women are probably better and closer in their downhill running skills than the top 5 men. So I'd suggest the gaps potentially between someone like Patrick running conservatively and someone like Elisine could be larger. But significantly right now, we're seeing the runners flood by, and the fact that Patrick Cabinino is being man-marked by Elisine, I would suspect, shows that he's happy to allow the front of the race to turn out in any way that doesn't affect him. And as long as he finishes ahead of Patrick, he doesn't care who wins this. He's going for the series.
Absolutely, he is. But he does also have to be aware that Kiriago is only 42 points behind him. And 42 points, luckily for him, means that Elisine only has to finish in the top 3. But if he finishes 4th and Kiriago wins it, then Kiriago will take the title. So it's not just quite as simple as trailing Kipingino. But I think he's well aware that Kipingino will move up through the rankings and probably end up in the top 3 at the end of today. Although it is Christian Allen of USA still leading the way at the moment.
And you know, Patrick Cabinino, a very, very good climber, former world champion at the vertical kilometre. That's where you run a kilometre as fast as you can uphill. Christian Allen coming 4th at this year's World Championships on the shoulder of Patrick Cabinino. So they are very evenly matched. Significantly, though, Philemon Kiriago is the faster descender between himself and Patrick Cabinino. So if Elisine is allowing, as you say, Philemon to get out too far, there is a chance he won't be able to catch him on that downhill. And Philemon knows, while he can take some risks, if he even finishes in 20th position, he'll still probably finish in the top 3 overall. So Philemon might as well go all out on this climb, trying to get a bit of a lead that he can defend with his downhill skill, knowing that if it all goes wrong, it won't actually make an impact to his overall finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing to lose for Philemon Kiriago. They've just broken away from the bit of the track that they will see later on during the day. They've got that extra little loop at the end when they come down off the big descent, and that will involve, what, another 150 meters of vertical before they double back and come into the town of Ledro to finish. And Christian Allen, a lonely run so far.
And this is...
Sorry, David, I was having a look at where most of the runners come from, and 95% of them live in the mountains. There are those who live in flatlands. Is it possible to get yourself into this sort of shape without spending time in the big mountains?
I mean, it's certainly easier, and we can see Philemon Kiriago and Paul Machoka now just on the back of Christian. It's certainly easier the higher you go to altitude, but there are some freaks in the game still. If people like Tom Evans, who won UTMB this year, he's been tested and he can seem to travel to altitude without it affecting him. And one of the challenges for athletes who aren't used to it is if you try and adapt to altitude quickly, your body's still trying to recover from the change. So therefore, if you're trying to train while you're adapting, you create too great a load on your body. But Christian Allen lives in Utah. He trains at altitude. He lives and breathes altitude. So these 3 actually all were born and raised at a very similar height.
Yeah. Machoka it is leading now. Kiriago in 2. Christian Allen, in the space of 100 meters, has gone from 1 to 3 and already giving away 10, 15 meters to the two Kenyans who've come past him, and the group behind coming up fast. So Christian Allen maybe not so wise to go off so hard, despite the fact that he is an absolutely superb road runner.
Hopefully he can hold on, and this is one of the big challenges of a trail race like this. The athletes are so varied in their skill level for up and down. So do you deploy your greatest talent early, knowing that it might mean you're very tired towards the end, or do you actually run conservatively and not take advantage of the fact you can climb so well? But Paul Machoka, of these three, Paul Machoka is the one who is slower on the downhill. So if these three stick together, they'll know that by the bottom, it will be the two of them fighting it out.
Is that just because of his lack of experience of trail running? He's relatively new to it, certainly compared to Patrick Kipencino. Or is it just the fact that he doesn't have the head for the downhills?
It's a really good question, and it's an element of all of those. We saw yesterday at Philemon in the prologue, so 2 days ago, didn't have the heart for aggressively attacking the downhill, but he's someone you expect to normally conquer his fear and just go all out. If we look at Paul Machoka, he is far more cautious when he runs the downhill, but even looking at their physique, Paul is very light, very good climbing build, but actually you need huge strapping thighs to be able to deal with the impact you have on those downhills. And so if we look at the best runners in the circuit, the downhill, they have a very powerful build to be able to turn quickly and just not have to brake too much and control that downhill all the way.
So Paul Machoka now some 30 meters clear of his compatriot Kiriago, and still looking very, very smooth. You were talking about what the pacing should be down on the bottom flat section of the course. I think 99% of us, knowing that we had, what, 9.5 kilometers of uphill, the final section of which is, what, 200-meter gain in a 1,000, so a 1 in 5 climb. I think most of us would take the initial stage fairly steady.
And this is, Paul knows he can't afford to do that. Interestingly, recently at the World Championships, Paul came third in the Classic, a 14K race up and down. And in first place, the world champion is Philemon Kiriago, sat behind him. So these two have raced each other relatively recently and have a good sense of how strong they are. So I don't think Philemon will mind too much Paul going out ahead right now. And actually, sometimes it can be useful to have someone else setting the pace. But the fact he's looking back isn't a great sign.
Well, I'm just thinking he was talking to Kiriago, not realizing that he'd dropped him, and I think there was obviously some pre-race plan to run and work together on this early stage, but Paul Machoka has got himself, what now, 45 minutes clear, and he may just ease down and prefer to run with the company of his teammate.
And it's a little bit different to cycling, where if you're in a peloton, the aerodynamics of being behind someone mean that you can actually use 30% less energy to run the same speed. But mentally, tucking behind someone can be extremely useful, and it does feel easier to run with someone setting the pace for you. Now, if we think back to 3 years ago at the World Championships, we did see some teamwork work together very effectively. Back then, Remy Bonnet was head and shoulders above everyone else, was going to win the final day. And we had El Hussein and Petru Mamu team up together to beat Thibaut Baronian. El Hussein knew he had to finish ahead of him to take second overall in the series. And as they came down the mountain, El Hussein said to Pedro, "Look, we're Team Africa. please can you bury yourself right now to drag me ahead and make the difference? And Pedro sacrificed some of his overall points by burning himself, his candles, to ensure that Ellison got ahead and took second place today. So second place that day. So I do wonder whether Paul is on team instructions to go out hard.
Yeah, quite possibly. Ellison, incidentally, has got himself up into 4th place, I think it is. So no change at the front of the field in this, the final race of the Golden Trail World Series for 2025. Paul Machoka leading. We've got Philemon Kiriago in 2nd. Taylor Stack, I think, still in 3rd. Or in fact, Taylor Stack has now gone ahead of his teammate Christian Allen, if the screen is to be believed. And Ellison El-Azawi's indicator has just gone off the screen. I think it may be buried. I think he's running with Joey Hadorn and Seoli at the moment.
And you've got to hope that Christian hasn't gone out too hard. He did say that he'd picked up a bit of a cold this week, and potentially that is catching up with him. But Taylor Stack, another runner new to the circuit this year, who has come from a very fast track background and it seems to be adapting very quickly to running on trail and has that downhill talent, even though his experience wouldn't necessarily suggest he should be as good as he is. And we have Taylor Stack there in the blue and the green, number 6. Ellison El-Azawi ahead of him, and just ahead of them, I believe that is Michael Seoli, potentially, and Patrick Kipinuno, the 2 teammates for Team Run Together. It's surprising how much Paul Machoka's looking back all the way through.
Yeah, I think he's just wanting some company in this early stage. There is Christian Allen.
And Cesare Maestri, the local runner, knows this course just behind.
He knows what's coming.
But interestingly yesterday, Sara Alonso was talking about the pace that Joyce Giroux and Madalena Faria set off, and they attacked that first climb so quickly that it actually filled her with confidence that she was doing the right thing, because she knew they wouldn't be able to maintain it by the top.
One of the things we are basing our training and our races is a heart rate training zone. My name is Sylvain Cachard. I'm a professional trail runner for Hoka. There are 5 different training zones, which go from really easy intensity to really hard intensity, and it allows us to monitor our effort. The first 2 zones are below the first threshold, and it feels really easy to train in it. Then the 3rd zone is more or less the Golden Trail World Series intensity effort, like the target effort, which we can handle maybe between 2 to 3 or 4 hours. Then the 4th zone is the one more or less called the second threshold or threshold intervals. And then the 5th is the super hard, the VO2 max, the maximal intensity we can handle. When we are racing, we are not always in zone 3. Sometimes in downhill, even if the intensity is really high, like the heart rate goes a bit down, and so we are somehow a bit in zone 2. And at the top of some climb, or maybe at the start or at the finish, if we have to battle for, I don't know, podium or top 5 position, we go a bit in the threshold zone, so in zone 4, but never in zone 5, otherwise you will be dead.
Well, that's interesting. David, when were you last in zone 5?
I see. I did a couple of laps of the lake this morning, and it almost killed me. So not too long ago, but certainly not at their paces. But that montage, you could see some of the key clashes of the Golden Trail for the last two series. Those sprint finishes between Elisine and Patrick Kipignino, but that was Sylvain Cachard, former European trail champion, explaining part of the challenge, as we're already seeing today with Christian Allen changing his pace, not going too high into that zone 4, that zone 5 too early.
Well, Machoka still going nicely.
I have to feel a little bit sorry for our camera runners. They've already run this course yesterday, having also done the prologue on the Friday. So this is their third day in a row of having to run at World Championship pace.
Yeah, if they only did a couple of 100 meters each, I think it would be easy work, but they stick with the lead runners for a long time. And it's important for us because it gives you some idea of just how hard the lead racers are going, and the cameramen are elite runners themselves.
We have a lot of orienteers who come on the course. We have actually got bikes today as well, and previously in the Golden Trail we have had the Olympic gold medalist mountain biker filming for us. So that is the level of skill that is required to be able to run whilst filming, because it's very hard to follow your feet when you need to get the camera, and they also have weights on their back as well, so it's not just the case of a GoPro. They need to be lifting this huge pack with them as they run. But this is playing out very differently to the races we've had so far this season and the previous finals. We saw last year and the previous year, our race favourites all at the front, shadowing each other. And towards the end of the race is when Elisine broke. But I think the fact they're allowing Paul to, well, that Paul is going out, there's a little bit more tactical strategy being deployed this year, not just in this race, but through the season. And so it'll be interesting to see whether Patrick and Philemon are talking to each other right now and discussing what the best strategy is, because most importantly, they can speak a language that Elisine can't, so they can communicate with each other even when they're in a group.
Team 30, je décroche avec la tête de course.
How's your French, Patrick?
Well, I think he was saying Team 30 is finished.
Fatigué, I believe, was...
Great work. Great work. Just checking the GPS trackers again. Looks like Fabian Venero of Spain has had a really good start. He's only 50-60 meters down on the race leader, so he's up there. Still no real... I haven't had a convincing sighting of Elisine Elizawi. Whether he's...
This is a huge move. Patrick to be in second place now. Kipignino, the Kenyan runner. When the camera turned back, I didn't see anyone else further down. So clearly this is a decisive move that he's decided to attack this climb, and Elisine hasn't gone with him. Is this a chink in the armour?
Well, it is early days. We didn't talk too much about Lauren Gregory in the early stages of yesterday's race, and she came through, of course, to join the race leader pretty much as they went over the high point at Chima Parry. So maybe that's what Elisine has up his sleeve. He's almost relying on the work of Patrick Kipignino to do that.
And we saw the video clip about the intensity zones, and while these athletes won't necessarily be looking at training zones on their watch, they will have a an innate understanding of what their paces feel like. So it could be Ellesine just thinks Patrick is running at too fast a pace. Our chasing group on screen now, though. We can see them here clearly. Is that Ellesine at the front?
It does look like him.
So that's the chasing group now. Ellesine El-Azoui, our series leader, at the front of the group on the right. We have Philemon Kiriego in third place overall behind him, and Taylor Stack, the newer runner from America, also climbing well with them. So Patrick clearly has made a break here, and they haven't responded. One of the question marks we did have about the prologue, it was 7K, 550 meters, and Ellesine buried himself on that run to get an advantage in the overall points. Patrick didn't look as tired coming into that finish. I thought it might be that he was just getting tired through the season and had to take it easy, but potentially that rest or not going as hard in the prologue is helping him now to burn a little bit more up this hill.
Yeah, Machoka, another one who was slightly off the pace in the prologue, 35.05. He was almost 3 minutes slower than El-Azoui, and most of that came on the downhill, which is where the damage is done. And Machoka there wearing 18, leading the way. He's been out in front since they left the road. Didn't take long before he went ahead of Christian Allen of the United States.
Intriguingly, Paul hasn't performed that well on the Golden Trail Series, partly because of that. In fact, we're going to see where we're running now. And hear from Philemon Kiriego.
Golden Trail Series, I saw the fast climbing. We are having 6K with 1000 elevation. I'm ready for it. After that, we have some narrow path, which is on like a ridge in the top of the hill. Then we have technical downhill. You know, the more we run, the more we are experienced in technical. Now we are not afraid of technical, so we are ready for Sunday. So at the moment I'm 12 points behind the winner. I want to see if I will scramble these points so that I will be on the top of the podium stage.
Well, we're saying that when he did that interview, he was 12 points behind. By finishing outside the top 5 in the prologue, he's dropped to 42 points behind. So he has no choice but to work hard today. And he started pretty well. We've got Kip and Gino up into second place now, if that is to be believed. Taylor Stack of USA has certainly upped his game. Christian Allen seems to have recovered a little. He dropped back very, very quickly when the two Kenyans went past him, but he's still up there. And El-Azoui, where is El-Azoui? Where does he lie in your ranking, David?
I mean, it's still, I'd say the time difference is now, how can you ever vote against El-Azoui at a race like this? His downhill is so devastating. I'm gonna call up a little bit of what Philemon was saying though, because he talked a good game in that interview about not being scared of the downhill, but actually when it came to the prologue downhill, he wasn't even in the top 5. This is an area that he's known for being very good attacking downward, but he did say afterwards he has a family, he has children, he doesn't want to risk himself too much, and I think the level of the technicality of this race, it's far greater than we've seen at the finals in previous years. And there is an element of, while they're used to running technical, not technicality like here. And if they struggled on the prologue, it's even more technical in the second half of this race. One
of the Spanish runners going through. That's net number 46. He's level with Roberto De Lorenzi, who doesn't seem to having a brilliant day, but net started fast for Spain. Slightly surprised to see him in the top 6 or 7 in the early stages, but I think he's dropped back just a little. With every 5 minutes, I'm losing faith with my GPS tracker, but it has got the race leader correct, and that is Paul Machoka. Can we confirm that Patrick Kipingino is in 2nd place with Kiriago in 3?
And Paul Machoka's burnt through its 2nd cameraman. Incredible. But we're going to hear a little bit more from one of our athletes today.
According to me, this is the last race. So for me, I have to put all my energy to push very hard and to stay in the first group from the beginning. And you know, everybody will be playing his game. So it will be a very tough race. Yeah. Because Losin is now leading. I and Philemon, we are in the 2nd position. And Losin want to win. Philemon want to win, and I want to win. So it will be very tough. Yeah, for me, I will give all. If somebody come and sees me in because I think I will be the one pacing from maybe from 2 kilometers up to there.
Now, he's certainly not using any of his energy in that interview. I don't think I've seen someone so relaxed as Patrick was there. But, you know, he knows this is the end of his season, and he's come into other races knowing he's got a very cramped schedule. But wow, we're now with Elyssine Alazoui. It looks like he's responding, hoping to catch Patrick, but I haven't caught a glimpse of anyone ahead of him yet.
Well, the gaps are quite significant at the moment. The best we can do is recognise a landmark and then estimate the time. As this is all live, there's another exhausted cameraman. They've done great work so far.
But he clearly has changed gear here. The fact that previously, and there they are, Philemon and Taylor stacked together. Alazoui has put in a big amount of distance in only 3-4 minutes, and the fact Taylor Stack's now overtaking, you know, Philemon clearly is tiring here a little bit, and Taylor's decided he has to try and respond to catch up to Elyssine Alazoui.
Yeah, it was a strong start from Kiriago. Let's have another look at the virtual picture. Paul Machoka, pretty much the only one we're absolutely certain of his position. He is leading the way. Kipingino in 2nd. Christian Allen still there or thereabouts. You can see Taylor Stack some way down, just behind Roberto De Lorenzi. And Elazoui's name tag hiding effectively amongst the masses.
The hiding camel is on the course. Now, looking at the performance so far by Paul Machoka, now, I wouldn't expect him to be able to maintain this to the finish line, but he has had some standout races through the years where he's shown that he can deal with technicality. Even this year, he was the winner of Tatra Fest in Poland. We were there 2 years ago. It's got a relatively similar profile to this race. It's not too long. It has some very sharp up and down, and it does have the technicality. But here we go. Elizina Lazoui has Patrick Kipignino in his sights. He is stalking the second place runner, and this is exactly where he needs to be. He knows if he finishes one place behind Patrick, he wins the series overall. So it took a while to respond, but it is playing it beautifully right now.
Yeah, especially with Kiriago going backwards, that simplifies matters for Lazoui. And we've seen it before, haven't we, David? He just does not panic at the start of these races. He doesn't try and make an impression too early on, and he works his way into the race, and he's closing down on the leaders, including Machoka now. And I wonder what information Machoka has about his lead. 6.1 kilometers covered, 21 in total to race, so they've still got 15 kilometers to go. And they've got another, what, 4 kilometers or so of climbing before they reach 2,000 meters.
Now, this seems like he's coming to the end of the climb, but actually he'll be pulling left to climb up to the ridge. He'll be able to see where everyone is in relation to himself. As you can see here on the left of our screen, that is the ridge they'll be climbing before they then head right, dip down 40 meters before a very steep climb indeed to get to the peak of our course at Chimapani. So the top three, potentially the top five, will all know where they are in relation to each other. And the fact that these two are closing up means Paul Machoka's lead may be evaporating fairly soon.
Yeah, good thing the weather was clear the last couple of days. They got some decent pictures of the mountain range. It's a different scene today, and it's still a little bit humid, which I know Lazoui won't enjoy, but it's a little bit cooler than it was yesterday. It was hovering around 20 degrees yesterday. We're closer to 16 today.
This will feel quite nice for them right now. The question is, when they get on that peak, there has been a little bit of a breeze of a crosswind. If that picks up, could start to feel quite cold. None of these athletes, their preference isn't that much for colder running, although this to them will feel like home. But mentioning Elizina Lazoui's his patience with the race, that has been earned through years of getting it wrong. We saw in his first Golden Trail final out in Madeira in El Hierro, he went off hard, ended up collapsing, and I had to carry him off the course to an ambulance because he was just so dehydrated, he got out too quickly. And it wasn't really until 2 years ago at the final that we saw him actually being a little bit more strategic and understanding that he doesn't have to be leading all the way through the race. It's the finish line that counts.
Absolutely, that was exactly what Lauren Gregory said yesterday. She wasn't so concerned with being the fastest sprinter or the fastest uphill or downhill. It counts for nothing unless you're first across the line, which of course she was after a brilliant performance yesterday. Now we got a view of a runner about 150 meters in front of the #1 ranking, and I'm just wondering whether that was actually Machoka and whether Lazoui now has a visual contact with the race leader.
If he doesn't, Machoka will be turning left soon, climbing up the ridge, up to the ridge, and they'll be able to fully understand where they are. But these two won't care where Paul Machoka is right now. It's useful for Patrick because if he can get ahead of Patrick and they stay first and third, he's closer on points. I don't think it's quite enough to win. I'll just quickly check my numbers again. But he knows he needs other runners in between himself and Enesine to win the overall.
So that is our leading three. Machoka
Louri est parti en
ahead of
premier. Louri est parti en
Kipchino,
premier.
Alazoui of Morocco in third place. And so the favourites floating to the top, as you would have expected. It's taken a while, just about 45 minutes on the clock, but they still have a lot of climbing to go. The next kilometre and a half will see them gain another 250 metres, so the hard work is not quite finished.
And this cloud, this mist, can be quite useful tactically. Yesterday across the ridges they could see for miles, so all of the runners knew exactly where their opposition was. But if one of these athletes was to get ahead and make a break across the top, they would be able to use the cloud cover, the mist, to actually hide how far they were getting ahead and how hard they were pushing.
Was that...
So
Just
that
wondering
was
who that was going through.
Dominic Rowley, I believe, at the back. The Swiss runner ahead of him was Philemon Curiego, and we had Taylor Stack as well from America. So all still fairly close behind our top three. Now, we've mentioned how long the season is for these athletes. The first races were back in March, and to try and peak throughout the year is very challenging. The World Championships of trail running and mountain running were only 2 weeks ago, and significantly, Elassine Alazoui didn't race any of them. Sadly, it wasn't out of choice. Morocco didn't send a delegation, but he has been fresh. He has not raced for several months now. But at that World Championships, Philemon Curiego raced the vertical kilometre and he raced the classic, a 14K race, which Patrick Kipchino decided to step out of. And so Patrick has raced far less and has fresher legs right now of the two of them.
Well, there you see the profile of what is still to come. Chima Parry, the peak you could see in the distance, but they've got to drop down some 40-45 metres before they start that final climb. And that will be the high point of the course. Still pretty hard work going along the ridge, though. Although they dropped down, what, 190 metres, almost 200 metres to Cimadora, it's still a very, very tough up and down ride across rugged terrain. We saw a lot of fallers yesterday. Any update on the injuries from yesterday?
And if you look at this course now, you can see why there were injuries. We talk about technicality. What they're running on now is very smooth grass, very fast. But as they come across this ridge, there are rocks, there are roots, there are trenches. And sadly, we did have a few casualties yesterday. Naomi Lang, the British trail running champion, turned an ankle across the top of the ridge and had to pull out. But even amongst our top five, we saw on screen all of them fall at some point.
Well, once again, the cameraman is in oxygen debt. Now starts the first little bit of descending for the last 8.5.
And
in fact, 6.5K, isn't it?
I mean, Paul is still looking very good right now. He is flowing through this terrain, doesn't seem to be tired yet.
Yeah, just looking at his speedo, coming in at about 14 kph, which is significantly faster than we saw even from Lauren Gregory at that point of the course yesterday. So his legs are straight into the slightly faster action. And 50 minutes just about on the clock now. We're expecting a winning time of around the 2-hour mark.
this ridge is very draining for the runners. Typically, when you do trail races, you'll hit the cross of the top of a ridge, and there may be some technical sections, but when you're running along such a long ridge, you expect to be able to flow, to be able to run quickly. But if they haven't seen this course, it becomes disheartening because it keeps on changing. There are some scrambles where they'll have to do a little bit of rock climbing. There are some sections where some of our athletes may not be able to run all the way down the hill because it is that steep. And if you haven't got strong legs, or if you're fatigued, it just builds up the muscle fatigue, and that leads to cramps, and that leads to you having to slow down significantly. But we're with our second and third place at the moment. Elisine Alazoui, the Moroccan, at the back of our picture. Philemon Curry, Patrick Capigno at the front. The two of them still together. Seems like they're quite happy to run with this distance. Elisine not wanting to close the gap quite yet.
Yeah, this is a situation we saw many times last year, and more often than not, the Moroccan would overtake the Kenyan in the last couple of 100 meters with some devastating speed and occasionally some slightly dubious tactics.
Now, when we're saying technicality, you're hopefully getting an understanding now of what that means. You can see the way this course is changing and the rocks in there. But yeah, absolutely. Elisine has had 4 races now where he has used his sprint finish to win. And this is something that both Patrick and Philemon have tried to address over the winter. One of the training sessions they've been doing is 20 times 400 meter sprints, where they've tried to ensure their last 400 is as fast as possible, knowing that that's how they can replicate what happens in these races. And one of their thoughts coming into this weekend was that they were strong enough to out-sprint him at the end of the race. But I think after the prologue, that they're no longer confident of that.
I just got the feeling that Alazoui thought the prologue was vitally important. He didn't get any points. He didn't get any extra points for winning by over 2 minutes. And you have to wonder why he works so hard on that to get maximum points. But it has ensured that he's in a decent position going into today's race. And of course, Kiriago out-sprinted Alazoui in Italy, the last time we raced in Italy, which was back in May at Il Golfo dell'Isola.
And back then we thought maybe they'd broken the curse, maybe that training had worked, but then the following time that they went head-to-head, it was Alazoui who won the sprint finish both of the races in America, in Broken Arrow, and then in the Americas, and then in Mexico in the Tepec Trail. With only a kilometre or 2 to go, he just unleashed and they couldn't respond. But if we think back to last season, I don't think Elisine remembers that when they were running in Mammoth Lakes, Patrick Capigno was coming on the outside of him with a faster sprint kick than Elisine had. So I think if second and third get to that finish line together, he might be able to put a surprise into him. But he knows that even if he out-sprints him, there needs to be a runner in between them. But change of places again. This is Daniel Pattis, the Italian runner, overtaking Christian Allen. Daniel Pettis, a very good overall athlete, a good downhill technical runner as well. We saw in Dolomis and at Zagama how capable he is. So picking up places here, and someone who could enter the top 3 by the end of the race.
Yeah, Pattis, what was he, 5th in the series last year, lying 6th today going into this race, and he's only, what, 4 points or so down on Taylor Slack of USA. Certainly he can catch him, and I think he could. If he has a really good race today, he could finish up in the top 4.
And that's what he'll have in his mind. He'll know with these battles ahead of him, there will be some casualties. There will be some people who are forced into a pace, into that zone 4 and 5, who then have to slow down. And so he'll be hoping he can pick up places all the way through that downhill. One of the challenge for Daniel is that he isn't a full-time athlete. He works at a university, so can't train as much as everyone else.
Well, this is the last of the steep uphill sections that will take them up to the high point of the course. Just over 200 meters of climbing, and it's pretty steep, as you can see. And then they'll be tackling the technical ridge before the dramatic and positively terrifying descent back down towards Ledro.
It looks like the cloud is starting to be burnt off. Maybe they've got high enough, they're now in the sunshine. If you're feeling a little bit tired, that's just gonna give you extra energy and make you feel good. But let's look at our course here. They've done the uphill climb. The uphill segment is, in fact, I don't believe that is the uphill segment. That was the start of our race. I'm sorry, 1.1 kilometers
uphill segment
uphill.
is right at the top of the climb before you get onto the ridge. And it's just one big climb to start the race, is my understanding, after the flat segment. And you know, I expect to be feeling pretty tired towards the top there. So I think, you know, people with really good uphill legs are going to be strong, but the top of that climb is going to hurt, I think, especially 2 days after the prologue. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, I think the question is, you know, the leaders in this race, they're concerned about winning the day. They're not concerned about being the fastest up this last section of climbing. But there will be those who feel there's a bonus to be had if they can produce a really, really good last section on this ascent.
And we've seen in previous years there have been additional prizes and actually an overall positions for segments when they've had multiple days of racing. The organizer, the race director of this series, a big fan of the Tour de France. So I think he's hoping next year there might be a little bit more focus on not just the overall, but these little King of the Mountain sections. But we can see here running nicely Paul Machoka at the front of our race. He is about to turn up to the very steep climb to the peak of, I believe, Chimapari. And behind, they're catching. Can you see just to the left? That is definitely Patrick Capinino and Elisine, the three of them coming together now. He's going to have to battle hard to survive this next climb at the front of our race.
I guess it was inevitable with the pacing that Machoka applied in the early stages of this climb, and Elisine Lazui just seems to be getting stronger and stronger. We'll get another shot of him fairly shortly, and I think just about everyone will have their money on the Moroccan to be quickest on the first downhill section. The traverse across the ridge is certainly going to be interesting, and the Kenyans were bigging up their technical abilities, because of course in the early days of trail running that was something they weren't quite used to, but they have improved massively over the last 3 seasons.
And it's had to be a real focus for a lot of the athletes on the course today. It's not just African runners who don't necessarily have terrain near to them to be able to practice and understand how to run through routes like this, but typically American trails tends to be a little bit less rocky, a little bit less technical, and so to have someone like Lauren Gregory come into the sport, and even Taylor Stack come into the sport and be so good over technical terrain so quickly, shows you that the sport is changing, and the different continents are catching up with the Europeans and adapting well.
Yeah, well, we were talking about the fact that there are one or two protesters here, not protesters, but people trying to put pressure on various bodies to get this sport included in the Olympics. I had a look last night to see just how many people are involved in the sport. And the estimate, a conservative estimate, they say, is 20 million around the globe who actually get involved in trail running. And in US alone, it's up around 13 million.
When's the last time you saw someone race walking? How many race walkers are there outside of the Olympics? 50 people? 20 people? 1,000,000 to 1, and yet it's still not an Olympic sport. Come on, the Olympics. Come on, Seb Coe. Pull it together.
Yeah, it could be good to see, but while we're just watching them complete the last bit of uphill, and we may well have an overtake coming up soon, so we'll be right on top of that as Machego loses his lead inch by inch. Kipnieno is there in second, and Lassawi, he's like a magnet to the back of the Kenyan, isn't he? He's absolutely not interested in going ahead, although from the running style you would assume he could do that.
Yeah, I mean, just look how hard that looks for all of them. They're all hunched over. There is a time when it makes sense to switch to running, so it's switch from running to power hiking, but I think they all just want to keep the positivity and feel like they're striding forward. But, you know, Elazoui has closed the gap on Kipnieno. There was 10 meters, 15 meters, but right now he wants to be right on his shoulder. And if you're not used to this, this can be incredibly annoying. I know with Remy Bonnet, for many seasons, he had Elisine Elazoui on his shoulder throughout the 90% of the race, and it starts to wear you down because it feels like you're doing more work than they are. And so it's a tactic which is really crushing to deploy, and there's nothing you can do about it other than run significantly faster or stop, and you don't want to do either of those.
Yeah, and it's particularly annoying when you know the guy behind you has a better finish than you do. Bonnet, though, two-time winner of the Golden Trail Series, 22, 23.
And you know, we saw at the World Championships this year a return for Bonnet to peak form. He has struggled with injuries recently, but he won the VK World Championships ahead of Patrick Kipnieno, the first time he's actually been to the World Championships, and he's now got the VK record in his sights. So shout out to Remy, but just remember, it all started at Golden Trail. Come back and pay us some love. There you go. A little bit of naivety there from Paul Machoka, you know, taking their lower route, where this is one of the confusing elements of this course. You can see how rocky it is, and that's because in the First World War, trenches were dug across the top of this ridge where the Hungarian state were battling the Italians, and that means there are ridges that aren't necessarily the natural trail route, and the athletes can decide which of them they want to take.
Yeah, with Kipnieno out in front, if they were to finish in this order, it would be the Kenyan, Patrick Kipnieno, who would take the title, simply because there is a man between them. But a long, long way to go. But I don't think that's the significance of that will be lost on either of the two Kenyans.
And the fact that Elisine Elazoui, you know, he's the best of these three down this descent, but he doesn't want to be leading because Patrick right now is having to choose the route they're taking. He is determining the foot position, and so Elisine can just sit back. If he can save a yard by cutting a corner, he'll do it. And so, in fact, Paul Machoka, what a response from him. I stand corrected, Paul. I'm sorry that I've named you as a downhill runner. Clearly you had something held back that I've not seen so far on the Golden Trail. This is intriguing.
Well, it's early days. It is very early days, and the steepest part of the course is yet to come. He looks as though he's running scared at the moment, really going all guns. Kipnieno is very, very cautious indeed. Look how short those paces have got. The cameraman takes a tumble. Hopefully we get to see that footage as well. But you do not run down this part of the course and look through the viewfinder as well. That looked painful.
And the fact that Elisine, we know that Elisine is faster than Paul Machoka on downhill. We do know that. And this is Taylor Stack now. We're seeing for the first time actually in our series how good he is at trail. We've seen in his performance that he's clearly not fazed by any terrain, but wow, fast feet, no fear. He's looking majestic right now.
Yeah, beautifully balanced on that first bit of the descent, but that will get harder as they go down. Remember, they're descending 1,000 meters plus, 9.6K completed, 21 in total to race. So they're coming up to the halfway stage of this race, but some would argue that the hardest bit is still to come. They've got to traverse the ridge and then the steep downhill starts. Let's have a look at it on the screen. There are your positions. There's quite a big gap between that leading group of three now.
And that really surprised me yesterday, and I think surprised a lot of the runners, that there's been so much focus on this huge descent where they go over 1,000 meters down in 4.6K, but it was across the ridge that really made the difference in a lot of the places. We saw Lauren Gregory fly through the field into first place as Madalena was struggling to maintain pace on this rocky terrain. And today we're seeing the same, the fact that it's allowed Paul Machoka to pull away within a few yards, and there's clear distance now amongst our top 10.
Yeah, Kiriago, I think, back in 5th place at the moment. Taylor Stack going really well for the United States, 5th in the standings. Stack finished 3rd in the prologue, so he showed his downhill skills in that race, but he was still almost 3 minutes. I think he was 2 minutes 40 down on the time produced by Lazui.
Yeah, and this is where we don't know how much of that was holding back versus a flat-out Lazui, and how much of it is just because he's better suited to long distance. He comes from a track background as well, a very good steeplechaser. Won the US title for his age group, and I was intrigued how he's managed to switch to trail so quickly. But he actually grew up in Colorado, and his mum was a trail runner. She took part in Broken Arrow Sky Race earlier this year, so he's from a dynasty of trail runners. It makes sense that he can use that speed and adapt to this so quickly. But we can see now the clouds and the cloud cover where you can hide. Paul Machoka will be ahead and they won't necessarily know where he is. I say that, they can see exactly where he is. He's above the clouds still.
Yeah, he'll be descending into the clouds on a good day. You can see Venice from the top of the ridge, Cima Pari.
And that is one of the challenges with broadcasting from the top there. It's a very long way from the peak to the antennas at the bottom. But we should be bringing you an update fairly soon on our race splits. The first split was at the peak of Cima Pari. Now, if we look back to, in fact, we can see here, this is Patrick Ipanino and Elisine Lazui, 2nd and 3rd in the race, but 1st and 2nd in our series. Still content, Lazui, to just sit behind, and he's clearly just waiting for that downhill to make his mark and really attack to go for the win.
So an hour and 5 to hit the high point of the course. 3 minutes or so on the ridge, and then it will be another 10 minutes or thereabouts before they start the steep part of the descent. And so the prediction of a 2-hour finish mark, probably not far off the money from Cesare Maestri, the local runner, who we haven't seen for a while.
Now, I do have a few chip timing updates. This is from an hour and approximately an hour to an hour and 4 when they came through, and there we go. Some chip timings for you. No surprises there. Patrick Capinino, fastest on the climb, clearly clawing back that time over Paul Machoka.
Yeah,
Joey Haddon.
Yeah, good comeback from him. Remember, he was second in the prologue 2 days ago, finishing ahead of Taylor Stack on that occasion. So Joey Haddon, obviously, despite producing a brilliant run in the prologue, has saved something for the big day.
And quite surprising that he's in the top 5 climbers, because he's known as a downhiller. This looks like Dominic.
Is
Dominic
this not Fabian Venero?
Oh,
I think it's the Spaniard Fabian Venero. Yeah, he was right up in the top 6 in the early stages. So he's kept at the pace, and that could be one of the big surprises today. We saw a few yesterday in the women's race. Was it Lucia Krokoc? I don't know if you managed to have a chat with her to find out how you actually pronounce her surname.
I didn't, but one of my cameramen is Slovenian, and he laughed at me every time I tried to attempt her name. So apologies, Lucia, for the way we butchered your name time and time again yesterday. But yeah, Fabian Venero is still in 6th place when we had our last checkpoint at around 1 hour and 3. Other significant changes in the top 10. We mentioned Cesare Maestri, the local runner. He is in 10th place. Tucked behind him, Joey Haddon in 11th, who's both of those runners, very good downhill runners. And someone else who I think could come through this field, Michael Saoli, the other Run Together runner, who is in 9th place at the moment. Philemon Kiriaga, though, interestingly, around 1 minute and 30 seconds back on the Capinino Elazawi group, about 90 seconds back, and he was only 15 seconds behind Taylor Stack, or I suspect Taylor has extended his lead now over Philemon Kiriaga.
Paul Machoka, after that little burst on the first downhill section, still holding the lead. He's pretty much had it all the way. Just a brief section where Capinino was out in front.
And is this in second? Wow, he's made his move. He has dumped Philemon Kiriaga on the technical steep descent. Elazawi has made a significant change in our overall standings. He's now in 2nd place on the hunt for first, but he knows if he maintains his 2nd position, he is winning our series.
Yeah, well, a good time to have a chat with Elazawi. Obviously arriving in Italy, and his intention was to come here with maximum points. That's exactly what he achieved. He says, yes, of course, I really want to win the title again. I'm here for that, and we'll see how it goes. Says his plan from the start of the season was really to win 3 races and go to the final with the 600 points, which is, as I say, exactly what he's managed to do, having won races in the US, Mexico, and of course Sugama. And for the final, he's just saying he's going to wait and see how he'll handle it. The prologue, he always enjoys. He likes a really good workout. Physically, he says he's 100%. Mentally, he's 100% as well. When that's the case, he's a dangerous man. And he says if he wins again, that will be it. He will have achieved his objective for the season. Well, not everyone gets to achieve their goals. He's certainly doing it in some style, and Elazawi up into 2nd place for the first time in today's race with a minute and a quarter on the, an hour and a quarter on the clock.
We're still waiting for confirmation of how much of a gap Paul Machoka's burst down that hill has created, but we can now see, in fact, we can see first, second and third strung out behind, unless that is a cameraman at the back. Elisina Lazoui can now see Paul Machoka ahead of him, and he'll be feeling pretty good. I mean, Paul, stop looking back, start running forward. He's gonna catch you otherwise.
Yeah, starting to look a little bit heavier in the legs, but that's understandable. Over 1,000 meters climbed already, a total of 1,600 meters of ascent in the course of this race. Not the hardest stats, but I think when you add in the technicality, it makes it one of the toughest races. I was looking at the Nevis skyline, David. That's 29k and 1,800 meters of ascent, taking in Ben Nevis and Kermorjerik as well. That's a very, very tough run indeed, with some difficult descents.
And I love the fact that, you know, that as a race, not only is Ben Nevis the highest point in the British Isles, they decided it's not enough. We've got to tack on more climbing as well. But Paul Machoka, I mean, he's looking very good now. It clearly was tired on those uphills, but flowing very well through these trenches in this technical terrain. So potentially could stay ahead of Lazoui for longer than we were expecting.
Well, he won the Italian Mountain Running Championships back in 24 last year. And he's had some very, very impressive. What was he, 6th in Sierra Zinal, which was the last of the Golden Trail races 9 weeks ago.
And in many ways, you know, Paul Machoka has suffered from just the breadth of talent coming out of Kenya that he's not often talked about. You know, if we didn't have Patrick and Philemon and Richard Atuya and all these other great runners, he'd be the name that would be on our lips week in, week out. But the strength of depth of runners coming out of Kenya who can run trail right now is remarkable. And so finally, a day in the sunshine for Paul Machoka. But this is a really good performance from him. 2 weeks ago at the World Championships, he finished around a minute behind Philemon Kiriego. And so it'd be intriguing to see. He's good at running the downhill so far, but how will he adapt to the steep descent? And the difference between what we're seeing in trail here is that the downhill, 1,000 meters of drop in 4.6k. And Elisina Lazoui closing quickly now. I mean, look how much he has shortened the distance between him. Every little bit of climbing and he's up on his shoulder.
So this is the start of the climb up to Chimendoro at 1,800 meters. They've not got a massive ascent to go, and that will be the last, pretty much the last high point. Once they've completed the downhill, you can see at the extreme right of that profile, there is a little bit of climbing to do before they drop back down to the lake, about 100 meters or so, so nothing significant on its own, but I guess after 18k of running the mountains, they will feel it. 10.27% the gradient.
It doesn't look like Lazoui is even tired yet, does it? He just very relaxed, very smooth. Now this descent, it's a mix of leaves, wet soil, rocks and roots. Very, very hard to choose a route, and even if there has been switchbacks in the trail, the course director has cut some of them out to just drop vertically down this mountain. So we did see yesterday a number of our top runners falling, and Joyce Njiru up in second, third place, throughout the majority of this race, really struggled through the last 20%. Partly energy, but it looked like she'd picked up a slight injury falling on this big drop coming.
Well, it's a spectacular view for those spectators that have gone to the trouble of getting to the top of this ridge. Not something that the runners will really have an opportunity to take in. Lauren Gregory and others all saying that this is an extraordinary race in that it's one where virtually 100% of the time you have to be concentrating on exactly where your feet are going. So now, Chimadora just about complete, and the gradient goes from gentle to very, very steep, and Machoka will be the first one to take it on. I don't think it will be long before Alazoui of Morocco goes through. Kipingino wearing number 2. So accurate foot placement, so important at this stage. And still less than 100 meters or so between the leading runners.
Beautiful shots of the peak there. The clouds behind. If without those clouds, you would be able to have a look across at Lake Garda. Can be seen to the left, and to the right is Lake Ledro. Beautiful scenes indeed. And this looks to me like Michael Seoli across the top, a very fast Kenyan runner. He'll be expecting to pick up places on the descent. He was in the top 5 of our downhill segments in the prologue 2 days ago. But one of the puzzling aspects of yesterday's race was when we saw Sara Alonso struggling along the base of the climb, running back to our finish line and barely able to navigate some fairly rocky but simple trail. It turned out on the downhill, the dust that was generated as she was running blocked her lenses, so she was running blind for about 3 or 4 minutes and had to wait to the checkpoint where she could get some water, clean her eyes out to be able to run normally again. And she had a couple of really bad falls in that time where she was unable to just predict where her feet were going to land. Really tough running from her, so incredibly powerful finish.
Yeah, and also impressed by the fact that she ran into the finish. Let's have a chat with Taylor Stack now, who will talk us through part of the course. He's lying 6th in the standings. It's been a good season for him. He's raced in the US, in Austria, and in Switzerland as well. And he's well aware that a lot of athletes have had a slightly different
from
approach.
What I hear,
what does
I
he say
haven't
about
seen
the
it,
downhill?
but it appears to be really steep, really loose and rocky. And, you know, you're going to have to save some legs to really be aggressive and efficient on that kind of downhill. And I think it advantages people with a little bit more, you know, technical skill and more of like a rugged mountain running background compared to those who are purely relying on fitness. You know, there are some rocky spots. There are also some kind of exposed spots where if you fall off the trail, like you're falling for a long ways. So I think it's going to be important to like stay alert and stay focused, because if you slip up, you know, there could be consequences.
I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. Would have been quite handy to chat to someone who'd actually run the downhill, like Maestri himself. But his assessment is not far off, is it, David? It's absolutely brutal. And as I was going to say, you mentioned the trenches all along the top. A lot of people may be wondering why they're there, but it was during the war and to allow the troops to move unseen by the opposition on the other side of the hill. It's an enormous amount of work to prepare those trenches, but fascinating that they're still here.
Go, go, go.
And in fact, that was Cesare Maestri who just ran past. And you know, this is a special race for him. He was course record holder, but not just that. And Elisine now tucked behind his classic position behind Paul Machoka. You get a sense of just how technical that was. And Daniel Pattis now on our screen chasing down. But Cesare Maestri actually met his wife at this race, and they're having their first baby in December of this year. So this race not only gave him one of his best victories in his careers, but actually changed his future for forever. The energy of the cheer zones they're incredible to see. That will lift your spirits after how hard that climb was.
Well, we'll pick up the pictures again in a minute. The lead has been changing fairly regularly over the last 5 or 10 minutes, and once the Moroccan Alazoui is in front, they're going to find it very, very difficult to catch him on the downhill section.
Now, speaking to one of the Kenyan coaches about how they approach downhill, we spoke about it a little bit earlier this season, but because of the nature of Kenyans living at altitude, they tend to start their runs down and finish up, and that's the same with their races. So in the first half of the race, you don't tend to expend quite as much energy, and so they're used to flowing through downhills, whereas Europeans, because we climb up a mountain and come down, it's the second half where you're really giving everything, and so they're used to actually hurtling down technical descents far more than Kenyan athletes are.
Would it take too much to take them down to the bottom of the hill to start to start with a climb? Logistically, not quite so easy. Or
yeah,
to make them do it twice.
It doesn't seem like an obstacle that they can't overcome. Granted, but part of there is definitely a difference in how this sport is approached. For Europeans, this can become a career, but we have a lot of athletes on the course, like Daniel Pattis, we mentioned earlier, who actually works in material sciences in Innsbruck University. Running for him is a pleasure, and he doesn't want to turn professional. But if you're approaching this sport where you know an injury could result in all of your earnings finishing, then you're going to be a little bit more cautious going on the downhills, because you're concerned not just for yourself but for your family. And that's one thing that Philemon did say after the prologue is, you know, he didn't want to take the risks because he was thinking about what that would do to his earning potential, and so that could potentially slow them down today.
Yep, absolutely. And the other factor is that, you know, if you finish on the podium regularly, you can pretty much make a decent living. But if you're finishing down in 6th or 7th, you have to race a hell of a lot to be able to make enough money. Whereas those at the top get to pick and choose their races, they'll have better sponsorship, so they can stay fresh for events like this.
And one of the benefits in the growth of the sport is that it is changing the profile of the runners, and so we have seen, without naming names, a few athletes who are being paid to even turn up at road marathons, or who are doing races you might not expect to see them at, because the organisers are trying to get the name out about their race. And so once you are at the top of your game, as you say, you run less, you can get paid for not even having to perform hard. And over a long season, if you're a marathon runner, we'd expect to see you once, twice performing well. Yet these runners are having to race at least 3 races pre-season and our finals as well. Must feel very lonely out there, just up on the ridge in the clouds. It feels like there's no one else on Earth. Now we will have some race splits soon to see where our top 10 are currently and how the front of our race has changed. Coming through our checkpoint at 1 hour 22, confirmation that Paul Machoka and Elizina Lazoui were locked together in first and second place. Patrick Abinino, 20 seconds back, so not too far adrift, still in with a shout if he can somehow run the downhill of his life, but he'll need to start looking behind him. Taylor Stack now only 35 seconds behind third place. But we're back. Elizine Lazoui still in second, still content to just sit behind Paul Machoka. Clearly backing his sprint finish.
Yeah, but also I think there'll be an element of caution in there, and that has to be sensible, going on what you've just been saying about you know, how an injury can change your whole being and of course affect your livelihood in a dramatic way. Well, let's have another chat with Taylor Stack, who's come into this event pretty well rested compared to many.
Yeah, so my Golden Trail season this year was Broken Arrow Sky Race starting off, and then I went over to Europe and did Pitts Alpine in Austria and then Sierre Zinal. So just those 3 races, and based on those, I'm currently ranked 6th in the men's standings. I'm not exactly sure what people's strategies are, and I know that, you know, a lot of people are doubling back from world champs a couple weeks ago, so we'll see how people feel. But I would expect to see a lot of the top 10 ranked guys pushing from the front early on, just how these races usually go. Not necessarily whoever's first to the top. I don't think they are guaranteed the win or anything like that.
Well, they're certainly not if Lazoui isn't first to the top. But a pretty good pace being set on the early stages.
And we can see now Elizina Lazoui just very content to just sit behind. Oh, and here we go. Specialist downhill runner from Switzerland, the Orienteer. We expect Joey Hadorn. He's up to 8th place at the peak. He's someone who can tear through this field. If anyone could match Elizina Lazoui, in fact, he will be running faster than Elizina Lazoui right now because he is going flat out. So it wouldn't surprise me if Joey Hadorn is starting to pressure on our top 5 positions very soon. Just to confirm the places at our peak, Taylor Stack was 1 minute and 20 ahead of Philemon Curiego. Only 20 seconds behind him, Michael Scioli in 6th. 7th place, Fabian Venero still playing a blinder, 15 seconds back. But I suspect Joey Hadorn may have now overtaken him. Dominic Rowley in 9th, another very good downhill runner. And in 10th place, Remy Leroux with Cesare Maestri, the Italian in 11th. So I expect our top 10 to change significantly on this downhill.
Yeah, what was it, a 3-minute gap back to Joey Hadorn in 8th place at the moment. Kipingino at the top of the hill was 21 seconds behind his teammate Paul Machoka, And at the moment, Machoka still holding his own against Alazoui.
And we're following here Philemon Kiriago on screen. I don't think that is Taylor Stack ahead of him, unless he has absolutely turned on the burners to this downhill. Potentially it is. Potentially Taylor Stack and Philemon Kiriago catching up.
Well, if that was Taylor Stack in front of Kiriago, then he's closed about a minute on the Americans. Taylor Stack was in a good position earlier on. Here he is.
In fact, it can't be, can it? I think Michael Scioli may have overtaken Philemon Kiriago, looking at the timings coming into this.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Taylor Stack only 35 seconds adrift of Patrick Ipanino. In fact, he's in third place. He's made the overtake. Taylor Stack in third place now, if the stats on our screen are right. So he has overtaken Patrick Ipanino. I mean, this is game over for our series, surely. Ellisine can't be caught from this position, but Taylor Stack flowing through the field. If Paul Machoka can't continue to the finish line, Taylor Stack could be looking at his first top two.
Well, he's already gained. He has gained 45 seconds on Kipiano since the top of the hill. So he's absolutely flying, and reminiscent of yesterday when Lauren Gregory tore through the field and ended up in front on the downhill as well. And of course, Lauren Gregory went from fifth in the standings to third, and Taylor Stack started today in fifth position.
Now, just looking at our overall, Taylor Stack did begin in fifth place. It looks at the moment, if Michael Scioli holds on to fifth place, Taylor Stack will jump to fourth in the overall. So significant difference here.
Yeah, he's some way down on Kiriago, 117 points adrift of the podium at the moment, Taylor Stack. But gaining just one place in the standings would be good after today's work.
And Paul Machoka's still out there. He is still pushing the pace. You've got to respect this. He wasn't the name on anyone's lips, but look at him. The guy can run downhill. Beautiful flow. Ellisine is happy to just watch a masterclass and enjoy. It wouldn't surprise me if Ellisine brings out some popcorn soon and just starts enjoying the view. What a performance from Paul Machoka.
Yeah, Ellisine just keeping his distance, but on that last 100 meters or so, he closed the gap by 3 or 4, and he's really just interested in keeping the Kenyan in his sights, and he's doing a very, very good job at that.
I love the fact on the right of our screen there, Joey Hadorn, the cyclist, is struggling to keep up. 8th place at the moment. Do we think that is correct? Potentially. He was only 15 seconds back on Fabian Venero. It wouldn't surprise me if he's starting to pick up places now. We saw in China earlier this year, you know, Joey was sat back in 4th, 5th place, and as soon as they hit the downhill steps of the wall, which were incredibly technical, he just soared past everyone, and he'll be hoping to do the same today. But now in 4th place, our 2nd place in the overall series, Patrick Ipanino.
Yeah, just trying to catch up on the British performance. 3 started. I managed to track down Finn Lydon, 34th position, going over the final summit before the descent. He's some way back, but he'll be glad that he's ahead of Sasha Chapelin, who's yet to reach that point of the course. And no news as yet from Ewan Dowd, who had a pretty respectable prologue a couple of days ago.
It was saying that just earlier, Fabian Venero, who was on screen, it was saying he was in 6th position. If that is the case, he would have overtaken either Philemon Kiriego or Michael Scioli. So I'm just looking for confirmation of that. I believe he might still be back in 7th.
Well, let's have a look at the virtual viewer. Lazui, Machoka, Taylor Stack out front. Kipingino's some way back at the moment. Scioli's still there with Kiriego. Daniel Pattis, we haven't mentioned him much. He was in 9th position going over the last summit. And EU Net of Spain, who's a big surprise to be in the top 10. He's ahead of Dominic Rowley and ahead of Remy Leroux as well, and the local Cesare Maestri.
That's what we love about the Golden Trail. Athletes can just turn up and make a name for themselves, and it just takes one performance to suddenly be on the circuit and your life changed forever. And you know, we've seen some incredible. Taylor Stack, when he arrived at Broken Arrow, wasn't a name we'd ever heard before, and then he came out to Austria, top 3 there, and look at him now, top 3 in the final. An incredible performance from him.
Yeah, he's doing well. It's going to be interesting to see whose legs are still working at the bottom. Don't forget, they've got 4 kilometers to go once they come off this climb. Well into the woods now, so they know that they're halfway down the descent already.
At the base of this descent, it feels like the race is almost over, but there's still a significant distance to go and further climbing. They'll have 4.3k left, but within that they have almost 200 meters of climbing, and there is a section on the road that you get exposed to the sun, and it just feels like the race is never going to end. At this time yesterday, Joyce Njiru was up, still amongst it in the top 3-4, and just shed places in that last 4 kilometers. So we've got to hope that everyone has been fueling well. They will have an aid station on their way in where they can pick up water, but they haven't taken on any nutrition since kilometer 8, and that is a long time to be running at this pace without taking on liquid.
Now, most of our viewers, David, will have done enough hill walking or even fell running to suffer the effects of downhill the next day or the next 2 or 3 days, to be honest. What sort of state are these elite athletes in after a race like this?
It's so varied, and that's his I thought it was his girlfriend there who's also a trail runner running yesterday. A lot of these runners are so battle hardened that they may be sore the next day, but a few of them might still be going for a jog and feeling good. I did this course 4 days ago. My legs are still destroyed. Probably shouldn't have run this morning either, but it's surprising how well these athletes can adapt. And when we look at our finals 4 years ago, there were 5 days on the trot that the athletes could be running in, and some of them went out as if they hadn't even run the day before.
So Lazui takes the lead for the first time today, and Machoka quite happy to hand over #1 spot to the Moroccan, who of course is also the leader of the series. And this is going to be a game of cat and mouse, and Taylor Stack's onto the same section, but it looks to me as though Stack is paying the price of coming down the hill so quick.
It looks painful right now, doesn't it? And this road seems endless. I was going to say something about Paul Machoka looking back so often, but it seems that just is what he does throughout the course of every race, based on how many times he's looked back so far. But they are all on the same climb now. Elasine doesn't seem like he knows what's happening behind him. He's been looking back repeatedly. Normally when you go through an aid station, someone will tip you off about the relative positions, but it doesn't seem that that's happening today.
Well, he's already taken 7 or 8 seconds out of Machoka over the last 200 meters. And it looks as though the Moroccan is on his way to yet another victory. This will be his 5th of the season, if you include the prologue 2 days ago. And of course, it will confirm him as the series #1 for the 2nd year in a row. Paul Machoka, the newcomer, he's going to be a man to watch out for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a few more points early on this in the season, it could be that he'll be challenging in the future. But it's been remarkable for Elisine. We can see here 3 wins so far this year, but he's had 2 perfect seasons back to back. And if we think about previous champions, when Remy was at his finest, he won back-to-back seasons but couldn't win the final because it's so hard to maintain yourself in peak condition. But Elisine has won 5 races last year for 1,000 points, and it looks like he's on his way to another perfect 1,000 points this year. Quite astounding. Joey Hadorn, though, on our screen, saying in 8th place. So it looks like he hasn't managed to pick up any places on the downhill, but the front of our men's pack all extremely close together still. Any mistakes now, any falls, and you could be out of the top 10.
Yeah, we certainly saw that yesterday, just how close the women were at the top of the field. Of course, won by Lauren Gregory. Madalena Fleury was only a minute or so behind her, and then Sarah Alonso in 3rd, and then the top, the top 8 women all within 6 minutes of each other. And it's going to be a similar situation in the men's race, I feel.
And looking at the last checkpoint, I mean, Joey Hadorn coming through the last checkpoint was only 2 minutes behind our leader. So the top 8 within 2 minutes of each other. Insanely packed. And Philemon Kiriego here on screen in 6th position right now. I mean, he'll want to be in the top 5, but it's not going to make any difference to his overall 3rd place in our series. Oh!
Well, that's the first mistake from Elisine.
And it's so typical to see. It's not the technical downhill where people make mistakes often. It's when they're relaxed, when they've just heard the cyclist say something, when they're thinking about someone else. And that's when you just slip up slightly. Just waiting for confirmation of who those 2 runners are, but that looks like Joey Hadorn at the front there. Fabian Venero potentially with him as well. And 3K to go. Doesn't he look good? Normally you'd expect Elisine to finish races with sub 3 minute kilometers, but such is this course. They're constantly up and down. But when they get to the final 2K, there's an almost 200-meter drop. And I think at that point, he'll know he's got this race won. But here is on screen, I think, the battle for 7th and 8th place.
Yeah, I think that's Fabian Venero and Joey Hadorn again, I think. Dylan Ribeiro is up there as well. Last time we saw him, he was... well, he's vanished off my screen. He was down in 24th position, but I think he's actually doing a little bit better than that.
I think he might have some issues with his chip timer, potentially, because, yeah, the fact that he's on screen is he's got to be within that top 15, you'd suspect.
Cameraman having to take cover. Now, Taylor Stack, as he recovered, still little but heavy-footed as he's running now. He was very smooth on the top section, brilliant on the downhill, but it's taken him a while to get into his running on this last section. Yeah, they need a series of bells.
Patrick Kipignino now, look at the pace of Patrick passing him. He didn't want any doubt that Taylor could respond. And we were wondering whether, who would be fresh at the end of the season. Patrick potentially doesn't know what the results are ahead of him. there is a chance he thinks he can win this thing, and it looked like he was going out there to try and battle back more places.
Well, he was, what was he, 50 seconds behind when they came off the hill and hit the road. He's already taken 45 seconds out of Taylor Stack on that. No, 35 seconds out of Taylor Stack on that section alone. So Kipinieno is absolutely flying. Majoka is still in second place, and Elassine El Azawi of Morocco leading the way. Here he is.
Kipinieno, though, was only 40 seconds back at earlier, and it wouldn't surprise me if he starts to see Paul Machoka in the distance fairly soon. And given how much Paul Machoka is looking back, I fear for his ability to finish out and close out this race in second place. Still looking masterful, though, and if you look back on what has happened today, and there you go, Taylor Stack has responded. When he made the pass, it looked like he was trying to break the string behind him, but potentially he was sprinting just to find room to overtake. But Taylor Stack not out of it for third place quite yet. But if you think about today's race, was there any point that Elassine looked like he was stressed, challenged, in trouble, tired?
No, he is the master of feeding off other athletes, and it's a very, very effective way to run, provided you've got a decent finish, and he has as good a finish as anyone else on the circuit.
Team 30, je décroche. Team 30.
And this is what's so hard about trying to race Elassine, is that at the end of the season, everyone will go away and think about what they can change in their training, which races they can select to try and ensure that they have a chance to beat Elassine. And he can climb with the best of them. And if you can't drop on the climb, there's no one who can stick with him on the down. So where in the course do you make up the lost time of this year? He's almost a perfect runner.
Takes time off in the winter months to work in Morocco as a guide on the desert tours. That's where his talents were first spotted. I think it was a wealthy Swiss tourist who supported him, recognized his talent, and my goodness, it has transformed his life.
Oh, and it's the overtake. Yep. Will Taylor Stack be there as well? That is second place now for Patrick Kipinieno, but given how close Taylor Stack was before, he must be closing in on Paul Machoka now, and I suspect this cyclist is probably having difficulty with ensuring there's enough space so he won't interrupt the race. So second, third and fourth place all together with less than 2 kilometers to go. This is going to be an almighty battle for those podium places.
That was the last of the climbing, David. You saw the barrier put up to stop them going back up the route that they climbed earlier on this morning. And El Azawi will know that now he can let those legs just glide over the terrain. As long as he can keep that sort of speed going, no one is going to capture him. Even Kipinieno is going to struggle. Machoka is on his own at the moment. We're expecting to see Taylor Stack behind the cyclist.
I suspect Taylor's made the overtake already, but when you think there were only 2-3 seconds between them, surely Taylor has managed to squeeze by. Can we see anyone behind? And you've got to feel for Paul Machoka. I mean, he deserves to be on the podium today. He led out with no fear. When he got to the top, he made the break all the way down. He did the work for Elassine. This man deserves a podium. You can see the gradient there, 10% gradient going down, very steep. And if they'll all have tired legs, and the pain with every step will be just shuddering through their quads.
Yeah, those thighs will be looking forward to a day off. In terms of the end of the season, what is it, 3 weeks pretty much with the feet up and then get back into the training again, or will they be off looking to earn a buck somewhere else?
It sounds like Patrick Iberino this is the end of his season, but some of our athletes will be thinking about qualifying for circuits next year. I know a few of them have some ultra races they're tempted to just turn up for, cruise to a podium, pick up a little bit of extra cash. But you know, for someone like El Azoui, he loves to return to the desert. It's still his home. He is a Berber after all, and he'll be looking forward to seeing his favorite camel Amelie again and just hanging out with his family, having some delicious mint tea.
Fabian Venero on his own for now, but outstanding performance from the Spaniard, featured early on in the race, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's the top Spaniard today.
And a really great performance from him. You know, he has had some results in the past that have done well. He won at the Sky Marathon, Santiago, Luglio, but he's not really delivered at the level that would suggest he'd be top 10 today. So clearly an athlete on the rise, and someone who we hope to see more next year. You know, under 23, so a talent for the future.
He is already doing sub 3 minute kilometers, hitting the line, and he's got less than a K to go. We're going to beat that 2-hour marker if El Azoui can keep this pace going. 1:55.51 on the clock. Can he get in under the 2-hour mark? That would be some achievement here at the GTWS final for the season. And the man who has pretty much been dominant throughout. When he's raced, he's won, apart from one occasion.
And if you think he hasn't even had to deploy his downhill speed. Paul Machoka was leading the way, he was just guided. If he needed to, he could have attacked even harder, and I think there's no doubt this is going to be sub 2. I mean, I love the fact he's still bringing his bottle home with him. Doesn't want to be littering. But for Patrick Iberino, what a performance from him, you have to say. For a while it looked like he might be shedding places down to 4th, but there was clear distance there, and he really held back to kick in the last 20% of this race. And is this confirmation of our 3rd place? Taylor Stack now back to beautiful running form.
Chipignano, 2nd in the Tour last year. He's going to have to settle for runner-up again this time round, and the same man denying him. El Azoui has been too good this season. The only time he lost was the race in Il Golfo dell'Isolo in Italy, round 3 back in May, where he was out-sprinted by Phil Kiriago.
And coming into this weekend, it was Kiriago who I suspected would be the main challenger to El Azoui, but you know, Chipignano, the old dog, has still got some tricks. He can finish today proud, and I think he'll be happy with this performance. He said he was going to risk it early, and he did, but how do you stop this man?
He has done it again. So back to the lakeside for El Azoui of Morocco. The flying camel is just about to seal his 2nd successive Golden Trail World Series title, and he has done it in some style. They should raise the roof for this man. An absolutely superb performance. Once again, he had his tactics worked out. He stuck in behind Chipignano, the man who's actually going to come in 2nd behind him. but he put not a single foot wrong. Congratulations to Patrick Kipiñeno, another fantastic run from him. He's had plenty of podiums this year, including 2 wins, and he's just been beaten by a better man. He's delighted with that, so he should be.
Great to see. You know, you want to give everything in your final race, and bizarrely yesterday, all of the top 5 women finished happy with their performance because they'd buried themselves. And Paul Machoka coming through. Is this 3rd place? The cameramen didn't pick him up coming through. What a result from him. By far the best result of his career. He's won races outside the Golden, but he's never threatened the podium like this. He led from the start. He put it all on the up and the down. This man deserves the podium more than anyone else in my eyes. Well done.
Taylor Stack was on his tail, but he left his charge just a little bit too late, or did he push too hard on that downhill section? The American has to be happy with that. He's certainly going to move up into 4th place in the standings for his efforts today. So Alazui takes 1st, Kipiñeno 2nd. We've got Machoka in 3rd, and the American Stack in 4th.
And Michael Scioli coming through now. He knows that he actually needs, if he finishes in 5th, it looks like this will actually bring him up into 4th place overall. Oh, but he's behind Filliman. What does this do to his results? Wow, that makes a difference. I think on my calculations, Taylor Stack is now in 4th overall. Michael Scioli is down to 5th because of finishing behind Filliman. How close has this season been?
Yeah, Stack he started today 19 points down on Scioli. And I think there's going to be, I think it's 24 points between them today. So it was very, very close. And the advantage going to Stack, who moves up into 4th overall.
Paul Machoka's 3rd. At the moment, he's sat in on 6th. This is before, though, Daniel Pattis, Cesare Maestri, Dominic Rowley and Roberto De Lorenzi have finished all inside the top 10 still. So we're waiting to confirm who is going to be 6th place overall in our series. But what a season it's been. From start to finish, we've had different leaders. Filliman Kyriot. Filliman, I think, is the one athlete who you can see there's frustration in his eyes. I think he came into this knowing as world champion he stood a chance, but he's just not been able to deliver in the prologue all today.
Yeah, but don't forget, he was only 12 points off Alazui at the start of this weekend, so he certainly would have thought that the title could have been his this year. But it's staying in Morocco. So let's just confirm the top 5. Alazui takes the title, a winning time of 1:58.30, just 20 seconds behind Patrick Kipiñeno. We've got Paul Machoka, who led for 90% of the race, or maybe 80 if we take out the downhill. 1:59.32 to put 2 Kenyans into the top 3. And Taylor Stack of USA, 4th place, 1:59.42. They were the only 4 men to get under the 2-hour marker today.
The fact there were 4 of them, though, wow, so tight. That was Joey Hadorn coming in, but I think for 7th place, unless we've missed someone. If that is 7th, at the moment it's looking like that could be enough to catapult him up the rankings. He started today in 10th in our overall. But, I mean, they look tired, right? Patrick very happy to promote on running their team run together. A great performance from them, 3 of them in the top 10. And coming through, our new runner.
Yeah, Fabian Venero of Spain. That probably the biggest surprise of the top 10 athletes today. He's finished in 8th place, 2:03.07, which makes him, what, just about 4.5 minutes down on the winning time today. That was a fantastic run from the Spaniard.
Incredible. Both Salomon teammates then. Daniel Pattis coming through for It looks like 9th place overall, so Daniel Pattis at the moment sat in 6th place, we think, in the overall rankings.
He's not going to catch Taylor Stack, who's already finished. Suli's finished. Kiriago has finished. So Daniel Pattis of Italy stays down in 6th place, one below his finish last year. But 2 consistent seasons from Pattis of Italy.
And it's not been without issue. He has had injuries, and if anything, his performance in the Gamma showed that this is an athlete who now can back himself, and a clean run of a season, and he'll be back in those top 5 positions for sure.
Well, what a couple of hours it's been. 1,600 meters of climbing, and now an opportunity just to look back over the highlights.
And what a race it was. Just to remind you, we started today knowing that Elazoui just had to finish ahead of Patrick Ipignino to retain the series. But the question mark was whether there could be any other athletes to get in between them and to give Patrick a shot at that overall. Early lead though, Christian Allen, the American. We haven't heard from him since. I do fear for his overall finish position, but he went out, and the surprise of the day, Paul Machoka from Kenya, leading it out, building a substantial lead, and for a while we weren't sure where Elazoui was, but as soon as they neared the peak, the favourites started to flow through. Patrick Ipignino and Elazoui running together for a while. Elazoui happy to sit on the shoulder. As they crossed the top, we weren't sure whether Elazoui would make a move, but it was Paul Machoka showing his downhill skill, demonstrating why he was the winner of the Tatcha Sky Race in Poland. And Taylor Stack was the new person making moves. At the bottom of the descent, Elazoui made a break. Clear space between him, and even a fall couldn't slow him down. The question now was, who can catch Machoka? Patrick Ipignino back into the top 3, and not settling for that. He wanted to finish this race on a high, making the overtake, positioning for 2nd. And despite his fast finish, they weren't going to stop this man. The flying cannonball. 2 seasons on 1,000 points. 2 perfect seasons in a row. The first person to win back-to-back titles since the great Remy Bonnet. And Patrick Ipignino, 2nd today, 2nd overall in our series. Rightly delighted to pull out a performance like that at the end of a long season. And Paul Machoka, the surprise for everyone, managing to stay ahead of Taylor Stack for 3rd place in our final.
Christian Allen, last we saw, was down in 33rd position, so paying the price of a very, very tough start. Dominic Rowley is across in 12th place, the Salomon runner from Switzerland, 2:05.53. Time to have a chat with the winners today.
It is historic for me today. My dream is, my objective for season is to win a Golden Trail World Series, 2 again. Very, very happy. This is my big objective. Today, I ran smart, and you have some problem in the legs and the downhill, but I am very happy. Thank you for all person who support me, my team, my family, les amis. Is historic for me today.
Thank you very much, Januzin. Congratulations again for the 2nd win and the 2nd title in the Golden Trail World Series.
That was your champion, and what a champion he is. He will enjoy his trip back to Morocco. He'll be straight out into the desert, and fascinating life he leads. What a talent, David. He's absolutely got it all, but he came up with the key in that interview. He said he ran smart. That's exactly what he did.
And if we look at the runners who have been in the battle for our overall podiums this, one of the Inhofer brothers there, very fast marathon runner fishing. Elisine has focused on Golden Trail. He's not been doing the World Championships. He's not been doing mountain running races throughout the season. He started the season late, and didn't over-race. And I think if you look at his form at the end of the last 3 seasons, he's been untouchable. And if you want to stand a chance of beating him next year, I think you have to just only focus on Golden Trail.
I want to thank God for giving me this time until the final race. This is my third time to run a golden race, and I'm very proud with the position, even though my target was to win, but I managed to be the second. Yeah. And I want to congratulate my colleagues for making to be in top 6. Yeah.
Well, congratulations to you, because this was a fantastic comeback in the second place, allows you to keep the second place in the overall classification of the Golden Trail World Series. Once again, Patrick Quimeno, congratulations.
So Quimeno in second. His colleagues he was talking about, Paul Machoka, who was just 1 place behind him, Kiriago, who finished down in 5 today, and Seoli in 6th position. So 4 Kenyans in the top 6, but it was the Moroccans who came out on top with that wonderful performance from El Azin. And if he comes back next year, he's got a little bit of a limp on him, David. I wonder if that's a concern.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping Cesare Maestri, who's on the right of the screen, everything is good with him. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't look too bad, does it? Maybe just some tight muscles there rather than anything too bad. But contrast the finish of our men's and our ladies. A lot less blood on the legs today. But also a shout out to Ayunet, Spanish runner inside our top 10. According to our tracker, it looks like he finished in 10th place. New to the Golden Trail as well. Very good performance by him. But it does seem Africa are starting to dominate these races more and more.
So maybe running downhill before you run up again doesn't do you too much harm after all.
Look at the face of Finland Karegi there. Really not happy with today's result. You do have to wonder how much that World Championship title has cost him today. You know, only 2 weeks before to be going all out in a race is very hard to come back from. And whether he'll be doing the same in the future remains to be seen.
Well, I think someone's going to have to give El Azin a hand up onto the podium, I think. He's certainly done something to that left leg.
Here we go. Interesting that you just didn't see that in the way you ran. No. Still look fluid running in, and that's what adrenaline does to you. You just power through it. Maybe he sensed that Patrick was closing in on him, and he was still giving it all out, but wonderful to see everyone. These athletes know each other very well now. They've been on the tour together for 3 years. Except Dominic, except Taylor, the newcomer.
Yeah. So well, let's have a chat with Paul Machoka, who led the race for so long.
In uphill, I was very strong, but downhill, I was very... After 17K, I started to come slowly. My Vero Arusin is very strong in downhill. After 3K finishing the ride, I'm happy for top 3 today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. We're happy for you as well. And hopefully next year you can do the whole series, because with a result like this in the final, you would do well. Once again, 3rd place finisher, Paul Machoka. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's hope. Now, if they all come back next year, David, do you see anyone being able to overtake El Azin El Azawi?
I mean, it does partly depend on the races they choose, but it's so hard to bet against him because he's such an all-around athlete, and he manages to bring it out for the big performances. But the challenge is where on the course do you gain minutes on him? And because he's got this aura, he can just sit back and control. He doesn't have to risk anything.
There you see the standings, 1,000 points for the second season in a row. 47 points clear of Kipnieno of Kenya. Kiriago finishes third, wasn't happy with his race today. Taylor Stack goes from 5 to 4. Didn't quite match Lauren Gregory from yesterday, but a great run by the American nonetheless. Seoli in 5, Patis Savitli down in 6th, ahead of Joey Hadorn of Switzerland, who finishes 7th. Well, what a race, what a day, what a season. Thanks to David for his company and his expert analysis throughout the season. We will be back next year with more unbelievable races. 8 races in the final this year. Lauren Gregory taking the win in yesterday's race, but it was Madalena Floria who took the women's title. And today, no doubt about it, Elazine El Azawi of Morocco wins the race to win the season, his second in a row.